Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the Peapod. This is a podcast about peace. I am Teri Angel, your host, also known as Mama Peace, and I'm delighted that you have chosen to spend a little bit of time with us today. We have a special treat. I have a guest that I'll introduce who's absolutely wonderful. So, right now, just imagine with me, just for a moment, a world without constant conflict, a world where respect for diversity is the norm, a world where understanding replaces fear. I know that sounds like a dream, right? But that's the world we dare to dream of, and that's the world we strive to build here, one conversation at a time, inside the Peapod. Here at the Peapod, we believe peace isn't just the absence of conflict, it's the presence of justice, it's the celebration of diversity, and most importantly, it's something that begins with each one of us. Mother Teresa said peace begins with a smile. My friend Marietta says a smile is spirit magnifying incredible loving energy. I'm going to go with that one. Years ago, I published a book called Changes, and in that book I wrote, change cannot come about by someone waving a magic wand. It has to start inside. And that holds true today more than ever before. So let's begin the journey of manifesting peace in our world, shall we? Here at the Peapod, we don't have all the answers, but we certainly promise to ask the right questions. So welcome once again, and here at the Peapod today, I'm welcoming Ronnie Ryan. Ronnie is an intuitive coach and a wise woman, she sure is, who gets to the heart of the matter fast. She offers practical solutions for business and life issues, so you can move forward confidently, trust yourself, and feel more balanced. Ronnie also does past life work in the Akashic Records and soul intelligence for bioenergetic clearing and balancing. She hosts the popular podcast Breathe, Love, and Magic, which ranks in the top 10% globally, and she is a best-selling author with 6 books. She's writing her next book now. We have that in common. Conversations on the Inner Plane. Oh, it's her next book, Conversations on the Inner Plane, How to Talk to Anyone or Anything Intuitively. If you want the intuitive edge to find the magic in your world, visit her at intuitiveedge.biz. I'm sorry, I don't have my glasses on. I'm trying to read this print. Anyway, welcome, Ronnie, even though I butchered the last part of that.
No worries at all. No worries, Terry. Happy to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, I'm so glad to have you here with me. I met Ronnie earlier this year when we began 10 million for world peace, and Ronnie came on board enthusiastically and has helped us tremendously in that effort. And Ronnie, I so appreciate everything that you have done for us at the organization and all the work that you put into it with spreading the word about it. So thank you for that.
It was really my pleasure. I enjoyed spreading the word and writing blog posts and doing whatever I could to help because it's such a good mission.
Yeah, it truly is. And yes, Ronnie has blogs up on our website, 10 million for worldpeace.org. And I encourage you to go read those blogs. They're amazing. There's a few of mine on there as well, and I think Marbeth has written some. So, yeah, check it out. It's more than just a website to do meditations. We want the overall spectrum and really pulling out all the guns to help with peace. So, Ronnie, share with us, how did you get into peace and how did that come about for you, as well as helping other people to work with their journeys?
Well, I was a very spiritually curious person for much of my life, starting in my 20s. And so I've been looking at different aspects of what that means and trying different things and learning different things and studying. And truthfully, I didn't get involved with peace until I met Marbeth at a giant online networking event. And she was putting the call out for volunteers. And I was just in this place where I thought, that sounds like something that might be fun to contribute to.
Hmm.
And that's how it really started. So, um, the other thing is I do run a manifesting group called the Manifesting Power Hour. And
I
we've
like that.
been um, we've been together for 2.5 years, and one part of what we've been doing is focusing on peace for Ukraine.
Hmm.
So it just seemed like a natural progression when I ran into Marbeth and she told me about what the two of you were doing and how you were working towards world peace and how you've been doing that for so long. Never mind the new um, 21 days of peace that you just did. I thought, oh, that sounds really good. And I'm sort of already on the path. So there you go.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, and you've been so helpful, and you even led one of our guided meditations during that
I did.
21 days.
I did.
Yeah, it was beautiful. I appreciate that.
One of the
So,
things that, oh, sorry.
go
One of
ahead.
the things that has come from doing 2.5 years of, and I don't know if it's exactly because I don't know when the Ukraine situation started, but we started working on that. So one of the things that's happened is I used to have the whole group, we would focus on peace coming to Ukraine. And then recently, we kind of shifted our direction a little bit. Not that we're not looking for peace, but I was thinking, because sometimes I saw like a blanket of peace covering them, and sometimes I would see them, growing wheat again would be part of their prosperity or whatever.
Yeah.
But now we've changed our focus a little instead of peace to victory. So, everybody picks a side. What can I say? I picked Ukraine's side. And um, so that's what we're doing. And it's really interesting to make that shift because, peace is good and we want peace for sure. But we started thinking we really need some victory energy so that we can just bring this chapter to an end and move on. So we've kind of moved over to victory. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, well, I like that concept because we can apply that to peace, letting peace be victorious in our
Yes,
world.
yes, yeah,
And to me, it just shows the strength. And
yeah,
boy, we have a lot of strength behind us with all the spiritual help that we have to guide us into this era of peace.
very true.
Yeah. I know that Marbeth has shared many times about the Nostradamus prediction of the 1,000 years of peace. I call it the era of peace. And I feel like we are right there, don't you, Ronnie? I think we're really ushering that in now.
You know, uh, I did research on that when I was writing a blog post about it,
Yeah.
and it's really interesting because Dolores Cannon talked a lot about Nostradamus. She wasn't her own visionary. She did a lot of regression past life work with her clients, and they went so deep that they would only be aware of that life at the time they were talking. And so this is so odd, but she found someone who'd been a student of Nostradamus. And through this person, it was a woman who was a student in a past life of Nostradamus. Nostradamus came through and said to her, I've been misunderstood, and my purpose was not to predict all these horrible things, but to show the world that you could avoid these things and you could absolutely usher in a period of peace if you set your mind to that, set your intention, worked in unison with other people or whatever. And I was fascinated by that. So I think she had written, like, she's passed on now, but I think she's written like 3 books about Nostradamus and all these things that he predicted that were misunderstood. But I think that it's so amazing because he talked about the power of the mind way back when, I don't know if that was the 1600s, I'm not exactly sure. So it is so interesting. And I certainly think that there's a lot of energy moving towards that. There's so many people that are coming to this place of awakening.
Yes.
And that's sort of a new level. I mean, there's always been people experiencing awakening, but now it's more and more common. You're hearing about it all the time, about people who say things like, oh, I didn't start this as a child. I just woke up when I was 33 and suddenly I was psychic and I was interested in all the spiritual stuff. So it's just so fascinating. There's a lot of changes for the good going on now, and that could absolutely lead us to a more peaceful world for sure.
Oh, definitely. I'm holding out that hope. you know, I know for myself, my journey with peace began back in 1963 when Kennedy was assassinated.
Oh my gosh.
And I thought, you know what? There's got to be a better way. We've got to somehow understand how horrible it is to treat each other like that, to treat another human like that. And so from that was really the seed, I think, that was planted. And from then on, I was like, yeah, we just got to get along. I've never liked controversy. It took me a long time just really to find my voice, to be able to stand up when, I needed to speak my truth and to be authentic. But boy, once I did, it was like, okay, look out, world.
Wow.
Yeah, because we're needed.
Controversy is important though, because
Yes.
you can't, I mean, sometimes you have to stop or shift directions. And I don't know about your experience with this, but my experience is people don't really like change. So even if you don't mean to create problems or upset people or whatever, sometimes controversy is the only path, and it can wake people up as well. To look at things in new ways that they hadn't considered before. So I'm
Mhm.
not sure, for me, I don't know. I will address things if needed, which it sounds like you do too. Not that I like controversy, but I think
Right.
it has a
Yeah.
purpose for sure.
Yeah, I probably should have used conflict more than controversy.
Conflict,
Although
right?
I don't like being controversial, but I do understand what you're saying. And conflict. I grew up in a chaotic home, and so there was always conflict, and people fighting each other, and just no peace. Absolutely no peace there at
And
all. So whenever I get into a situation where there's that kind of environment, I'm like, ew, you know, let
yeah.
me let me back out of here. Yeah.
It's funny because I grew up in a family where there was definitely screaming and yelling, but then it would stop and it would be over, and then we would move on. So I learned to address things and not necessarily fear that kind of intensity or conflict. Not that I like it. I don't enjoy it or anything,
Right.
and I don't want to purposely cause it. If I'll do whatever I can to avoid causing a problem, but because of the way I grew up,
Yeah.
there'd be a blow up, and then the dust would settle, and then we'd move on. So it helped me deal with things.
Mhm. Yeah. It's a learning process for sure. Our early years and how we watch other people, parents, caretakers, peers, we learn how to deal with issues and how to interact with each other. But if it's a constant chaotic situation, it's like,
Oh yeah, that's very
yeah,
tough.
yeah,
You need some peace in order
yeah.
to grow.
I'd run away to the side of a mountain because we grew up in the mountains, and I'm like, give me my little clearing there on the side of the mountain, and I'll be perfectly happy. I think I should have been a monk or something.
Well, maybe you were at one time.
I'm thinking that was very possible at one point in time.
I bet
Yeah,
it was.
yeah. But yeah, so we do similar work with helping people to uncover things inside of them, and I find a lot of what's there to be uncovered is just old beliefs and you know sometimes thinking that we're not good enough, we're not worthy. Who am I to stand up and use my voice and say something, right?
Hmm.
So when you're working with people, are there any techniques that you can share with us? How do you help them to uncover things that may be going on in their lives?
That's so interesting because I have so many techniques because I really address things completely intuitively. So
Hmm.
I don't have like a standard process. So I'll give you a couple examples.
Yeah.
So yesterday I was working with a woman who um, was shifting gears and starting a new business, and was affiliate marketing. And she said that she had friends who had made $1 million in a year. And I was like, yowzer, that's oh, that's a lot of
Yeah.
cash. But she didn't get there yet. I don't know how many months since she's been working on it. Excuse me.
That's
So she wanted to know why, she's not there. So that's a time when you look at beliefs to see, what kind of beliefs might be
hmm
limiting or whatever. She couldn't really think of anything. And then somehow we stumbled on dreams. So that it opened a whole door. And she talked about two dreams that were really interesting. One was that she wanted to open the locker of her high school, open the lock on her high school locker, and she could not open it. She didn't have the code. And the other dream was that she had graduated from college, but she never went to high school. So now she had to go back. She couldn't move forward. So I was like, oh my gosh. So to me, that have to go back and do high school, that's imposter syndrome. Like,
hmm
so we talked about that. Do you doubt yourself? Do you think you don't deserve? And we talked about that. But the locker thing was really interesting because I am a firm believer in you can go back and change your dreams and then change the energy and then change the memory in because your body can't tell the difference between a memory you create or a real memory that you've had. There, it's all
hmm
filed the same exact way. So I said, let's go in. And she had never done anything like this, but it was really fun. So I said, just close your eyes and imagine that you're standing in front of that locker and that lock is there and you cannot open it. So you're going to have to be creative. So just see what comes to you. What methods could you use? Like, I was thinking it could be a bolt cutter or you can hit it with a brick or like, what could you do to get that thing open? And it ended up being very simple. It was just one number. She had to just go to one number. I don't remember what number it was. And the thing popped open and the locker was full of books. So I said, my interpretation of that, and who knows, everybody has an opinion or interpretation, but I said, you have now unlocked. She didn't have the code
Right.
to the knowledge that she needed and wanted.
hmm
I said, but now you do. You open the lock, you open the locker, it's full of books, and that's knowledge and wisdom. So now you have complete access to everything you need, and that does not have to hold you back anymore. It was so amazing. So that's one example. To me, that's a kind of energetic healing
hmm
because we got her past that place of thinking she couldn't unlock that,
Right. Right.
that was keeping her back.
And
So
that
that was,
it only had to be one way, right?
yeah. And she ended up doing it with a number anyway, which was
Right.
amazing. Like I thought, she was going to have to put some energy behind it or some force. It was like
hmm
completely unnecessary. I was fascinated. The mind is so amazing.
It really is, truly. Yeah. And what I was getting out of that was, well, now she has abundance because
Yes,
it was
yes,
so full,
yes.
and so it's like knowledge and abundance, they go hand in hand,
Yes, absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. And then today I was working with a woman who she's building a healing practice, and she told me about the different things she does and how she feels very drained, and she wanted to make sure that the different things she is doing are leading her forward to building her business or whatever. So there was one thing she was doing that I felt out of alignment to me. But then as it turned out, I said, well, do you get any clients from doing that? And she said, yes. I'm like, all right, it's a business builder. So it doesn't have to be 100% lined up. If you're getting clients from it, then it's working. So then we looked at, excuse me, some other things about what she was doing. And what it boiled down to was she needed more boundaries. And it's so amazing because she is an empath. And so one of her missions is to help other empaths manage their energy and stay in balance and use boundaries, right?
Yes.
And I forget the other, what's the other mission? Let's see. Oh, help people with who are experiencing some kind of illness or whatever that the doctors can't help them with. Those were 2 missions. So anyway, it was so interesting though about the empath part. And I said to her, you know what's going on? As I see it, we learn on a spiral. That's how I look at it. So you learn a lesson and then it comes back around. You're like, hey, I already dealt with this. Why do I have to deal with this again? Probably learning another level,
Right. Yeah.
you know? And so she was letting people drain her. She was doing these 15-minute sessions to see if people wanted to do a session. I said, that kind of thing is for coaches who are selling $5,000 packages. If you're selling one healing for $150, you don't need to spend 15 minutes with them, because it wasn't. She'd spend an hour and then they wouldn't hire her. And so we looked for all the ways that she was being drained.
Right.
And it came down to giving herself permission to put herself first and put time in her calendar for herself and to learn to say no and to strengthen her boundaries. And she was working on another whole level of the empath thing and not being driven by having such, feelings in her heart that she needed to drain herself to help everybody. It was, to me, it was just fascinating.
It is. I love working with people, and it helps the coach as well, or the energy healer, whatever we're doing to move energy, whether it's through a healing or opening up the mind. It really is beneficial on both ends, because when we start exploring, if you're like me, it's like the whole world opens up and we're like, oh, look at this possibility. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
Thank you for saying that.
So those are different ways that I work with people,
Yeah.
and that's why I say I never know what I'm going to be doing. But I look at things intuitively. I do energetic healing and clearing, and I can kind of help people interpret stuff. So, and I'm trained as a coach, so I've been a coach in the coaching area for 23 years. So I have lots and lots of tools.
Right.
That I don't need to bore everybody with all the different things I learned how to do.
But
I just
think it's important for people to know that, when you do find yourself stuck, there is a way to open up that door. And there are so many tools. And gosh, you've been doing it for so long. I can even imagine what your library of tools is like.
Well, I'm sure yours is very complimentary.
It's good when you can find that person that you work with that gets to know you and has you try different things, like what you described that you did with your clients.
Yeah.
Yeah, I always try to do that. I'm like, okay, how can we work here? How can we, really break through? And that's the thing. It's a breakthrough, whatever that perceived barrier is.
Right.
I'm a Course in Miracles student and teacher, and we always learn that there really aren't any barriers. It's all in our mind. It's what we have built up and what we perceive to be something that's stopping us. And so how do we get through that? How do we break through and open up the floodgates?
It's funny because I own the Course in Miracles, but I must admit I haven't delve too deeply into any of it. I never took a class. But in 1990, I left my corporate job and I got to a place of panic where I was starting a business, but it takes time sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And I was starting to panic over money and wondering what I was going to do. And luckily I had savings, but I hated seeing it dwindle.
Yeah.
And so I opened up the Course in Miracle. I love the crack the book open and see what you get theory about, on
Right.
any book. But I happened to pick the Course in Miracles, and I got something that I have not forgotten all of these years, which is your attack thoughts are attacking your invulnerability, which what I took away from that was you're invulnerable. So that's just nonsense going on in your head.
Mm-hmm.
Stop it. And I have to say, that really helped me calm down.
Yeah. Yeah. When you study the course, and I've been studying it for over 35 years, it
Wow.
creates a shift and a change inside of you. And there's one that I just dearly love, and that's my go-to. We are never upset for the reason we think we are.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Huh. So has that helped you figure out what you were upset about to help
Oh,
you
oh
gain
yeah.
clarity?
Yeah. Absolutely. So it's like it could be an argument with somebody, it could be a situation, and I can always step back and go back to that and say, okay, then what am I upset about? What's going on in my world? And I think a lot of relationships could really benefit from that
Oh,
because, you know, I've been through two marriages, and neither of them ended well. And I always
oh,
thought, well, why is there such attack? Why is it that person that you supposedly love, honor, cherish so much, and yet there's this energy that when something happens and there's an upset going on, that's the person that you start abusing, and it is sometimes a mental, emotional abuse, sometimes it's physical abuse. So I think it would really benefit so many couples to understand that and to hit that pause button, which is one of my techniques that I love to use. Hit the pause button and say, okay, well, if I'm not upset because that person said something, what am I upset about?
yeah.
And really look at what are the external factors that are going on,
Yeah.
that
Well, I think there's
to
a
that
lot of
point.
wisdom in that. And another way I look at it is, I was a dating coach for 20 years. So love was one of my favorite topics for a long time. So sometimes I think it's a matter of contracts. And this is my belief in reincarnation, of course,
Hmm.
which people may or may not agree with. But my belief is that we create contracts of what we want to learn together.
Hmm.
And so the people that we're in relationships with have agreed to help us learn that lesson, whatever that is.
Right.
And so, I worked with women who had been married 3 times, and they were like, "Who am I to try to find love again for a fourth time?" I'm like, "Don't be ridiculous. Have you lived in the same house all your life? Have you had the same job all your life?" It's like years ago, there was a lot more stability.
Hmm.
People didn't move around. They lived in the same house for 40 years. They had the same job, and they went through their whole life and retired from that. And change really didn't exist. Today, it's all about change. And this,
Yeah.
definitely freaks people out because a lot
Hmm.
of people resist change. And, to me, change is kind of like death and taxes, like you can't get out of it. So, but it's hard because we don't like things to change and we want everything to stay the same. And so a lot of that could be factoring into things. But what I always was telling the women who still wanted to find love again, and not everybody needs to have a relationship, primary relationship. That's not, it's not for everybody. But I would say you're learning lessons. So as long as you learned lessons from each relationship, who cares how many you've had? I'm like, a lot
Hmm.
of people had a ton of relationships and then got married. What's the difference? To me, I think they should take away all of the negativity about divorce. Not that it's not negative, because I've witnessed people going through it and how difficult it is. Even the
Mhm.
easiest divorces can be really painful
Yeah.
and difficult. It's a terrible thing to go through. But my point is, okay, you went through it. Now give yourself a break.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I love
Yes,
that. And I love your viewpoint. I don't know if you're familiar with Lisa Nichols. She's a very famous coach, um, speaker, motivator, and she's one that helped me tremendously after my divorce happened. And I would listen to her and listen to especially this one meditation that she would do, which involves taking your power back. And she was explaining that there are different kinds of relationships. There may be a relationship where you come together and it's for a purpose. And so you come together, you made this contract, like what you were talking about, and maybe it's to have a child. So you come together and you have that child. And so it may not be in your contract for the two of you to raise the child or to raise
that's
it
right.
together.
Yeah,
So once that contract is fulfilled and that purpose has been met, then all of a sudden it's like things get itchy. It's like, why isn't this working? Well, maybe it was just a purposeful relationship. You
yes,
decided to do something on purpose when you met up in the lifetime.
yeah,
There's some that are lifetime relationships, and
right,
you're going to work through whatever issues come to be in your world,
right.
and then you're going to be together with that person. And my parents were that way. My parents never separated. They were together, I don't know, 60 something years.
Mine too, 62 years. Yeah.
Yeah. And I've had several sisters that were, lifetime partners with their husbands. So it's there's different kinds of relationships. And
Yes.
so why I'm like you, why would we expect that just because we decided to get married that it was a lifetime relationship? It might have been
Right.
one of those other categories.
Well, and I think that's one of those newer, and we'll call it paradigms. I don't really like that word, but it seems to work here
Yeah.
because that's part of the change where there used to be stability and people would get married, and no matter how
Hmm.
miserable they were, they weren't leaving, they weren't changing things,
Right.
they weren't going to rock the boat. But
Yeah.
today, we have the freedom to move on. And so I think your point is so well taken that if we come together to be in a relationship, it doesn't necessarily mean it's a lifelong situation.
Right.
So it could change. You can move on to somebody else. You've completed your mission together, or
Hmm.
whatever it is, or you learned the lesson, and so you're done. You know, there's lots of ways to look at it, and so
Hmm.
that's why I think I know it's painful and horrible to actually go through the divorce, but once you get through that awful process, then another way to look at it once it's behind you is, all right, what did I learn? What do I want next?
Hmm.
And not to feel, to do what you can and not feel stigmatized by that
Yeah.
idea. Because
Yeah.
it's not necessary.
Exactly. And don't you think, or just let me get your idea about it all comes down to expectations, I think. Because, like you said, in the old days, you didn't get divorced.
Right.
You worked through it, you might have hated each other, but you stuck in there. And so there was that expectation that if you're married, you're going to stay married.
Right.
And I think that has shifted and changed in
It
today's world.
absolutely has. Yeah. And so to me, that's a result of having a greater amount of personal freedom
Hmm.
so that you can do what's best for you. And that's another thing I was telling my client today about her boundaries or whatever. And this is an obvious thing to you, I'm sure, but it's like you can't give and give from an empty well. You have to let the water table rebalance and refill. And if you don't take care of yourself and you overgive, then you can't do anything for anyone, including yourself. So I said to her, the first thing when you wake up in the morning, you may have affirmations or things you're working on, whatever, but I think you should ask, what can I do for myself today?
Oh,
because you never asked that question. She was like, oh, I love that. So uh, I don't know. I think that was, sometimes that's what we need. It's like, all right, you're doing good in the world, but
mhm.
that's part of the peace process, I think,
Yeah,
is taking care of yourself and recognizing that when you take care of yourself, it's not necessarily selfish at all. Sometimes it's the best way to support everyone else around you.
yeah, yeah. Because it all comes down to you have to have that peace inside before
Right,
you can see it in the world. So,
right.
if we're in constant state of misery, we're not going to be peaceful. We're not going to have it and know what it means to be peaceful.
Yeah, yeah. Very true.
Yeah. Wow, I didn't know what was going to happen on the podcast today. But look at what happened when two coaches get together.
That's it. That's it. We've had a lot of experience and stories to tell, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's a beautiful thing. I love working with people, and um, it hasn't always been that way, though. I mean, even though that was my goal when I was going through school, high school, college, I always wanted to be a psychologist, and I even majored in psychology, and I
Oh,
did use
wow.
it for a while. But there's those those glimmering things that go bling bling bling, and you're like, oh, let me go look at that. You know?
Yeah, I hear you.
So I didn't stay on that track, but I always kept that desire to see others do well. I think to me that's what being a coach is all about, is to see others doing the very best they can.
I love that. I never thought about it like that, but that is a really beautiful thing. And then in a way, when you're working with them, you hold the energy for
Hmm.
them to, that vision of them succeeding. And it's kind of like the personal victory versus the Ukraine victory, right?
Yes,
So, yeah,
exactly.
you're holding the vision of victory for them to achieve whatever it is they want to
Hmm.
achieve. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, yeah, and it's when I do, it's when I pray for somebody or if I'm working with them in whatever capacity, I always ask for whatever is their best and highest good.
Yes, for sure.
And I don't try to put any expectations on what it's going to look like once we get started working. But it's like for whatever is your best and highest good, and it may be a total change, you know.
Yeah. Hard to know, but that's such a good point because we don't necessarily know. And even for myself, I don't always know. I know what I want, but that doesn't mean that's for my highest good, right?
I know, I've been doing a lot of deep dive meditation lately.
Really?
Yeah, there's just so much right now going on in the world,
There is.
and it's time, I think, for all of us to take that step back and say, okay, what's the next direction, or am I on the right direction? Is there something else that I need to be looking at right now? And I think even those who we see as having their stuff together, some of the people that are out there on the forefront, and the really innovators, and the ones that we look up to sometimes to tell us that this is what's what. Like Dolores Cannon, I always thought of her as really having her stuff together. But I think even those people who are more highly evolved in their spirituality need to do this, need to take that step back and reevaluate. And I'm sure many of them do
Oh yeah. I mean,
to be
we're not
successful.
here to we're not here to skate no matter what level you're at.
Yep.
Nobody gets away from doing the work. So it's interesting that you were saying about the deep dive. I'd love to share something that happened. I have a garden, and so sometimes I go in the garden and meditate. And so, it's the end of the season and our garden's kind of wrapped up and there's a few string beans left or whatever, but we haven't like closed it all down. And I have zinnias in there. I love the zinnias. They're such
Oh, yeah.
happy flowers. So
Yes.
anyway, I went in and I just said, I was full of gratitude and thank you for an incredible season, for your beauty, for your bounty, for all you do. And I just went on and on about how grateful I was for all the beauty, and I named each vegetable or plant or whatever was in there. And then I opened my eyes, and on the zinnia, with these little orangey brown moths that I've seen on them, they love the zinnias.
Mm-hmm.
And so they sometimes they do synchronized flying. I don't understand it. It's like ice skaters who do a dance together, and that's what these little moths did. Anyway, so two little moths do a little synchronized thing and come and land on my arm,
Oh.
and I'm like, oh, that's very unusual. They do not land on your arm, and so I
No.
thought, oh, it's a message that they heard me.
Mm-hmm.
I was
Yes.
like, oh my gosh, that was pretty amazing when nature responds like that. So then I thought, all right, let's go see what else I can find. So I went to talk to the basil plants, and I had two basil plants in the garden. So first I had one, and early in the season, the bugs were attacking the newest growth leaves, which was really weird. So it looked so unhealthy, the plant. So I thought I better
Mhm.
get another one. So then I got another one, and then that one was being attacked, and that had never happened to my basil before. And
Wow.
I thought I'm going to get a third one, and I kept that up on the deck. I didn't have it out back in the garden. So anyway, I sprayed one time some kind of organic stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and it just turned it all around one time. I don't know how that's possible, but anyway. And then they became these bushes of basil, just unbelievably like 3.5 feet tall, 2 feet across,
Mm-hmm.
crazy wild bushes. So I thought, let me go talk to the basil and see what you have to say. And they said, don't count us out. I said, you looked at us at a moment in time and you made a decision that we weren't going to make it, but look at us now.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Yeah.
thought, oh my gosh, what an incredible message, because it's true.
Yes.
I was
It
worried that
is.
they weren't going to do what they normally do, which is turn into these practically beautiful bushes of basil.
Oh,
So
see,
that
when
was a great message for me and a great
yeah,
lesson. Don't count them out.
don't count them
Okay, got it.
out. Yeah, it's kind of like one of my favorite sayings is don't quit 1 minute before the miracle.
Oh, yeah.
So pretty much the same idea. Don't give up.
Yeah.
Never give up and just stick around and see what happens. you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh gosh, I love this. I just put your website link up there
Thank
for
you.
anyone who may be loving what you're hearing today. I hope you are. And I know this has been a little bit different because normally the whole podcast is about peace and, all the things that are going on. But I just wanted you all to meet Ronnie and really see her
Oh,
beauty and her magnificence. So I hope
thank
that you
you.
will take that down and reach out to Ronnie because she's got some great ideas and some great experience and will be able to share with you how you can be the very best that you can be. So, Ronnie, anything that you would like to add? We're coming up to the end of the show, and I've really enjoyed this time together. I love conversations where we can just explore and just open up to what Spirit wants us to know.
Well, thank you, Terry. I have to say, I didn't know we were going to go either, and it was fun. We touched on so many things, but I
Yeah.
think the last thing to bring it back to peace is that the personal piece is really the key. And so I love what you said about what we're doing for coaching, what we're doing with coaching, and how we're seeing the best possibilities for people. And so, really, that is personal peace. When you come from that place of peace, I don't need to tell you, but when you do, so much more happens. You're much more magnetic. Things can be more in the flow and come more easily. So we'll wrap it up with that message of personal peace and look for how you can expand on that in your world.
I love that. Thank you for that message. So, to anyone who has not joined our mission that we are on, the 10 million for world peace, the website is 10millionforworldpeace.org. It's an absolutely beautiful website. If you go there, you're going to find all kinds of stuff, including a share page where you can just go to that link and share out the copy that we've already put in there, and you can share it with friends, family, enemies, whoever you want to share it with. And there's also a donut. No, it's not donuts, it's donate.
That's
I'm
really
really
funny.
getting tired today. So it's a donate page because we need help with getting it all rolling along as it needs to. And so you can choose to donate one time, or it's set up where you can put a recurring payment and you choose your amount. So if you want to give us $5 a month, if you want to give us 50, 500, whatever it is that you're able to contribute, and every dollar helps. Every little bit will help the train keep moving along. So
Right, right.
thank you to everyone who is already behind our mission and those who may be new and just hearing about it. We'd love to have you as part of this group and this family. So thank you again, Ronnie, for being here with us, and
My
thank you,
pleasure.
audience, and just so much love. I always end my show with stay in your heart and stay blessed, because
Lovely.
the heart is where the love is. So thank you, everyone. I'll see you
Pleasure.
next week on the Peapodcast. So until then, take good care, everyone. Bye now. Bye, Ronnie.
Bye.